Hi there. You're about to hear some information I think you are going to find very surprising, but probably not as surprised as I was when I came across it. My conception of Satanism was both way off, and I fell victim to obfuscation, which I've spent time on before, and is intended to cause people to avoid a subject by confusing terminology. So in this case, for fear that it's demonic or evil or Mom would somehow disapprove. Nothing could be further from the truth, as the title of this episode implies. There's a form of very real, very impactful Satanism that is all around us, which I'll get into at length. Which brings me to my hypothesis. With a fair and honest hearing of this information, I believe you will see that the vast majority of humanity are Satanists, as evidenced by their behavior. A bold claim indeed, so let's take a look. Welcome to episode 31 of the Exit Your Matrix show and our exploration of Satanism. Something I want to start with is that there are very different groups who believe in and adhere to satanic principles, and, as in most cases, I suspect they have different points of agreement and disagreement. So my comments are based largely on one of the most widely known sects in Satanism, and that is the Church of Satan, founded by Anton LaVey. With that out of the way, let's get right to tackling the first misunderstanding about Satanism, which is that it involves worshiping an evil deity known as Satan or the devil. And I was right there, hook, line, and sinker. I bought the facade of the popularized images and themes religion and Hollywood have created for us to conceal Satanism's true nature, which is actually much more complex and far more sinister. With full attribution to Mark Passio, who I shamelessly lifted this from, Satanism is actually an ancient occult religion comprised of diverse, interconnected networks of worldwide adherents. At its ideological core, this religion postulates that knowledge of the human psyche and knowledge of the laws of the universe should be occulted or hidden and held only by a few human beings so they may retain power over the ignorant masses. It is much more accurate to perceive Satanists and dark occultists in general as ancient psychologists who hold and wield hidden information in ways which exploit those who remain ignorant of it. Now, I spent time on this psychological aspect many times in the past. This is the importance of knowing ourselves at a fundamental level, not only our strengths and capabilities, but I would argue, more importantly, is the study of our weaknesses, blind spots and proclivities that can be manipulated and cause us to trade our sovereignty for comfort and perceived security, allowing ourselves to be turned into slaves in the process. Because, guaranteed, there are people like I just described who would intend to create and maintain a power differential over people based on that knowledge. And that power differential is most certainly intended to be used against you and for the controller's benefit. Now, there is a very specific form of Satanism I alluded to earlier that changes the whole face of this topic, and may be where you say, oh, well, if you define it that way. And that is de facto Satanism. As always, let's start with the words, with de meaning of, from, concerning, or regarding, and factum meaning deed, act, or achievement. So it most closely translates to in one's deeds or in one's actions. Notice that individuals practicing this de facto form not only don't have to subscribe to Satanism or belong to an order, they don't even have to know that how they're conducting their lives is even consistent with Satanism. So yes, one can be a Satanist and not know it. Not only that, one can be a professing and practicing member of some other religious order, any religious order, take your pick, and still be a de facto Satanist because the only things that matter are their thinking and their resulting behavior. De facto Satanism is also a low-level variant of the ideology that the masses are sold in place of the real thing. It's an imitation form of Satanism. It's the exoteric version, meant for the uninitiated, with the intention and design of facilitating control over people. And at the heart of this brand of Satanism is what surprised me the most. The god of de facto Satanism is the self, the ego. The term for this is apotheosis, elevating or exalting ego to deity status. And let's talk about another word, Satan, which comes from the Hebrew shaitan, which means adversary or opposer. Therefore, Satanism is ultimately about opposition to natural law, which is the true source of order. Now here's one of the most important features of this form of Satanism. It's a mindset, and that is extraordinarily powerful because mindset drives behavior, and that mindset is all about self. This issue of mindset is connected to one of the natural law principles, being that all things begin as thoughts. Mindset is crucial. Not rituals or prayer or belief or even faith that we would normally see associated with a religion. And the effectiveness of this method, this fostering of an egoic mindset, is found in the very evident fact that only a relative handful of people can see that our condition is, in fact, enslavement. Regardless of the level of comfort or convenience one experiences in that enslavement, or that it's tied to democracy, or was led by a group of otherwise well-meaning men who were attempting to unseat those enslaving them, a little or a lot, slavery is slavery. Well, that's another bold statement, so let's get to what I claim will prove not only that, but also my hypothesis that the vast majority of people are Satanists in their actions, in their deeds. Here are 4 characteristics of the satanic mindset, and let's see if they seem familiar. The first is selfishness and egotism. This characteristic of Satanism is the dictum that self-preservation is the highest law. In other words, the physical self's safety and comfort is always more important than doing what is morally right. So live for yourself only and only care about you and yours. And it's a dog-eat-dog world, and if you getting what you want requires you to take advantage of others or treat them poorly, then that's the way of the world. The overarching theme of Satanism is unceasing me thinking. So, would you agree or disagree, if you're being honest, that the vast majority of people in our society subscribe to this mindset? Most importantly, is the behavior consistent with de facto Satanism? I think if we're being honest, it's demonstrably the case that not only most, but practically all people behave that way. And let's not lose sight of the fact that this is how we're taught and encouraged to behave, because with it comes many avenues to maintain control. The second characteristic of Satanism is moral relativism. As I referred to earlier, this type of thinking is not only ego-driven, it is ego as God, or that process of apotheosis I described. Moral relativism is the ideology that there is no objective difference between right behavior and wrong behavior, so that it's then for human beings to arbitrarily create or decide right and wrong for themselves based upon their personal circumstances and preferences. In other words, what we determine to be right for ourselves is right, and what we determine to be wrong for ourselves is wrong. Given that the inherent and objective laws of morality hold that the aggregate amount of morality present in lives of the people of a society is directly proportional to the amount of freedom in that society, it follows that true freedom can never exist in a society that embraces moral relativism. So, would you agree or disagree that the vast majority of people in our society subscribe to the ideology of moral relativism? That there is no absolute right and wrong, and that personal circumstances and desires impact the determination of what is moral and immoral? Before you respond, let's again go to where the real answer lies. Is the behavior consistent with the ideology of moral relativism? Again, it gives me no pleasure to say it, but I think if we're honest, we'd have to agree that describes most, and I would argue virtually everyone in this society and in most. Pardon the interruption, but please give some thought to liking, sharing, or even subscribing. My goal here is to share what I've found to be information that is essential to our sovereignty, and I appreciate you considering helping me. As I'm sure you can see, and as evidenced by this topic and pretty much all of my work, this is incredibly unpopular and inconvenient knowledge, and people would much prefer to be thinking about pretty much anything else. But I've made the decision that this is the right thing to do, and your support means a lot. And here's more Satanism. On to the third characteristic of Satanism, which is social Darwinism. This is the extension of the Darwinian theory of the macrobiological evolution in animals that Charlie figured was fine to apply to human beings. His original theory was centered on the idea that the fittest animals, meaning those that are the most dominant, will rule their particular social structure. It's important to recognize that this term is still thrown around today, yet even the wiki refers to social Darwinism as comprised of various pseudoscientific theories. And that is, purportedly scientific claims were largely discredited by the end of the Second World War, partially due to its association with Nazism and claims around eugenics and scientific racism. And if you do any research on this subject, you will find that Darwin's attempt to apply principles of the animal kingdom to human beings has proven to be absolutely false. Humans are not just another animal, as more recent research is validating. So then the question, once again, being completely honest with ourselves, would you agree or disagree that the vast majority of people subscribe to the ideology of social Darwinism? That the most dominant humans should thrive and rule everyone else? The fourth and final characteristic of de facto Satanism is the never-ending desire for immediate gratification of the senses. Most humans have been conditioned to seek accumulation of the maximum amount of physical gratification possible. It's a state of conditioned response where this desire is so overwhelming, the person lacks the basic willpower to stop engaging in behavior that is contributing to or causing sickness and disease. So the satanic mindset can manifest in the form of ailments, addictions, and poor cognitive function that make people easier to control. Again, if we're honest with ourselves and we take a good look around, how much sickness, addiction of all forms, and questionable cognitive functioning from basically poisonous diets and lifestyle-induced chronic conditions do you see? We don't have to look far to see that those are at epidemic levels now, do we? And would you be surprised to know that the ability to delay gratification until primary objectives are met is a defining characteristic of dark occultists, our rulers? And they are very intentional about teaching this to their younger generations. Just like the average American family, right? With the terms that have been defined and the form of the ideology described, I think I've adequately supported my hypothesis that at least the vast majority of people, certainly those in this society, are de facto Satanists. But what do you think? Thanks for spending some time with me, and I hope you'll be back soon. I sure will. Be well.